Hey, friends, this is your friend, Pastor Stuart Titus Peoples of New Vine Baptist Church. Hello to all members and friends of our church family. I appreciate the time that you're giving this servant tonight. We want to start a Bible study. Get your pen and your pencil or your paper out as we begin a Bible study together. This is the first night of many concerning the Old Testament book of Job, the book of Job. The Old Testament book of Job. So if you have your Bibles, please bring them forward. Get you out a pencil and paper. Tell all of your family and friends that this servant said hello. Get your tablet out or your device out, whatever you need to take notes. I want to share my my work and my preparation with you, and hopefully we will discover so many different things, not only about the man named Job and his family, but we'll learn more about God and we'll learn more about ourselves. So when you're ready, I will begin with verse 1. The book of Job, verse 1. It reads, "Now there was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job." Now, the exact location of the land of Uz is not certain, but it was probably east of Canaan and has come to be associated with Edomite influence. It's not likely that Job or any of the characters in this book were Israelites, but they were real people, and they had real names, and there's a real history, and there are some real things that we can learn about each of them as this particular story goes on. Like the patriarchs in the book of Genesis, Job is depicted as a man of affluence, prosperous man, a prosperous semi-nomad living on the edge of the desert east of Canaan, probably near a town. And it says, "And that man was perfect and upright, a man that feared God and eschewed evil." There are four things about his character. The man was perfect and upright, a man that feared God and eschewed evil. Perfect? Well, you and I both know that no one is perfect. All of us are sinners, saved by grace. So there are no perfect people in the context of being sinless, or one who has not done anything wrong against God nor against one another. So what does that mean? Perfect. It doesn't mean sinless. Put that down. Job never claimed to be sinless, and this was never a claim for him either. No. He practiced, what it means is he practiced what he preached. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying his best to be that way. He practiced what he preached, and that's hard for all of us, but that's what he did. He was whole. He was well balanced. He was a man of integrity. He was a very open and transparent man, as you will see throughout this particular book. And the root verb carries the idea of being complete, well-rounded, wholesome, sound. He was a sound man, and he was a blameless man. Doesn't mean that he didn't make mistakes, but he didn't do anything intentionally. He was blameless. He did not enjoy, even if he made mistakes, he did not enjoy them. He would repent of them. He was blameless. And he's also described as being upright. So he's not only perfect, but upright. That's one word, upright. And this relates to his relationship with other people, his reputation. He was perfect and upright with his relationship with others. He was a man that was straight, that was faithful, that was loyal. His word was his bond. And so he was upright. He had an upright character according to his community, according to even his family. Upright, the two words perfect, when you put them together, the two words perfect and upright are also found together in Psalm 25 and stanza 21 and Psalm 37, stanza 37. You'll read those again. This in the book of Psalms, you'll see those two words again, perfect and upright together. Psalm 25, stanza 21, and Psalm 37, stanza 37. And taken together, those two words indicate the peak of human moral achievement. They indicate the peak of human moral achievement. What a man. You can't find too many people like this. Huh? And he feared God. Feared God. Biblical Hebrew or biblical language has no word that would translate a religious person. And so, therefore, the word feared or the phrase feared God is used. To fear God is the beginning and the end of wisdom. And so, therefore, it is implied that he was a very wise man. And here for the word for God, he feared God is Elohim. Elohim, Elohim, rather than Yahweh, Yahweh. No, it's Elohim. Job had a high and a holy concept of God. And as a result of his high and holy concept of God, he hated sin. He hated evil, to the point that he will run away from, he would turn against, he would get away from anything that seemed evil or seemed sinful. He was a very serious man about everything that he believed about God. He had a high and a very holy concept of God. And so he hated evil and he eschewed evil. He avoided evil. I mean, he feared God, which means it led to his avoidance of evil. But even more specifically, he eschewed evil. He eschewed it. He got away from it. He avoided. And as a result of his fear and reverence and respect for God, he avoided and turned away from all evil. He rejected any evil thing, which shows to show you that everything he was blessed with came not of some kind of crooked getting. No, everything he got was honest. He did nothing evil and worked not with evil people, sinful people, because he held God in such high regard. And as a result of that, he rejected any evil thing, and as a deliberate act of will, turned aside from temptations and the opportunities to do wrong. So his outward walk conformed to his inner convictions, not just beliefs, but convictions. Everyone has belief, but when you have a conviction, it's something that you believe in so much that you're not going to turn against. Being for something, God, also implies being against something evil. And the writer intentionally, when you read this, the writer intentionally uses these four character traits together and repeats them. Read it in the first chapter and verse 8, and in the second chapter of Job, verse 13. To describe, he uses it again to describe as strongly as he can the sincere goodness and integrity of Job. So this is not just any kind of person we're talking about. So take that to heart, because he was not just anybody. But as the story progresses, it shows that anything could happen to somebody. And he was a somebody, not just anybody. But just because you're somebody doesn't mean something cannot happen to you. And we will go into why those things happened to him in our later studies. And there were born unto him, verse 2, and there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. An ideal family, basically, especially in the context of those days, because of the number, both apart and together, 7 and 3. The use of 7 and 3, the largest number being the sons, was also adding up to, the largest number being sons, also ideal. Adding up to 10 is characteristic of what is called Semitic thought. But it must not, on that account, be considered an invention. God is capable of doing that. God did that for them, for his family, that they had that amount of kids, and those kids, the number of kids represented exactly what I just said. And note that although Job was wealthy and a powerful man and a very effective father of 10 children, he only had one wife. He only had one wife. And some personalities, as you know, they were known to have more than one wife, and that was allowed for God's own reason in biblical days. That was allowed. But part of Job's strength was that he had just one wife, and he had those wonderful 10 children by her. And having lived in the times of the patriarchs when lifespans were long, Job lived to see grandchildren of his second family in the 42nd chapter, verse 16. We'll talk about that when we get there. And the third verse says, his substance was also of 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels and 500 yoke of oxen and 500 she-asses and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men in the East. The highest expression of God's blessing at that time, brothers and sisters, was a large family. I think many of you know that was the way it was back in the day. I know folks now just want to have 2.1 kids. But back then, to have a large family meant that you were blessed of God, that God had smiled on you to have such a number. But the next most important thing, other than a large family, concerning a demonstration of God's blessings, was his favor to be counted concerning the livestock that he possessed. Sheep were valued for food and for wool, and camels, which were really the vehicles of the day, were valuable for transportation, and they were considered status symbols. I mean, Job had, Mercedes just sitting around in the form of camels. And at times they were even ridden in battle. So it wasn't just for style, but it was also for substance. And I'm not saying that he did that and had that because he wanted to flaunt that. I'm talking about what God blessed him with, because he can trust him with those kinds of blessings. And oxen and ass were considered working stock. Oxen and ass were considered working stock. And although no mention is made of specific land holdings concerning acres, how many acres did he have? The amount must have been considerable to have all of those animals. So, Job had a large number of servants as well. So he had to have a lot of land, to hold all these people. And most of them were probably involved in work-related agriculture and attending the stock. To the stock. Job was a businessman. Hear me today. So he had a lot going on with him. And God blessed him because God knew he could take care of his blessing. He was a good steward of what God blessed him with. And it says in verse 4, and his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. Now, the story is unfolding. It's not only talking about what he has, but what everybody's doing. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. All right. So what they're saying is each of the 7 sons seems to have had his own house, his own crib, though it's not specifically stated that they were married, more than likely that they were. And it's not certain what the special day was in this particular verse, though some take it to be probably a birthday. So the 7 sons took it in turn to dine with one another the week around, and did not forget their sisters in the loneliness of their parental home, but added them to their number. The feast was, doubtlessly an annual affair that they all enjoyed. And we see here a remarkably close family. I mean, what's better than family? He had a close family, Job did, with love and affection. They had learned, obviously, from their parents what it was like to be the leader of their homes and how they interact with their children. And so we see a remarkably close family with love and affection. I mean, blessed and better than blessed, expressed among the brothers and the sisters and their father and the mother. The sisters, are obviously unmarried, or their husbands would have been invited concerning that day. But nevertheless, that's not a bad thing. That's just the way they were in their relationships in their day. And it says in verse 5, and it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be, listen, it may be that my sons have sinned, and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Did you hear that? It shows the depth of Job. He was not just a businessman and a blessed man. He was a theological man. Listen to the depth. His understanding, his doctrine of God, that he knows that God has all knowledge. God is omniscient. Before it was ever called that concerning his natural attributes, Job knew that God was omniscient, that God knows all. And so he recognizes the internal nature of sin and how God could know the sins that they had in their heart, even if they had not actualized it in their lives. Help me, God. His concern then, Job's concern, was not that his children might have committed one of the more common sins of the flesh. I mean, that's important and that's bad. But listen, but the internal motivational sins of the mind, the heart, or the attitude. In this case, he feared that during the feast that they may have cursed. In this case, he feared that during the feast they may have cursed God in their hearts. Perhaps the main emphasis in verse 4 and verse 5 is not on Job's wealth or how well his family or his children got together, but on the seriousness with which he approached his duties as head of the family, as priest of his own household, as well as being a father before God and before his children. He was obviously concerned for the spiritual welfare of his children. And for some reason, there's no mention of offering sacrifices for his daughters, his wife, or himself. Okay, but he was still doing it, even for his sons. His greatest fear seems to be that his sons would sin, that his sons would sin or miss the mark. His sons would sin. It's interesting, I think you would agree, right, as I said, that the sin of cursing God was the one which Job feared in his children, the one which Satan said Job would commit, and the one Job also committed, not through the work of Satan, but through the comfort of his friends later on. How this is unfolding. And so, brothers and sisters, what we have just described are the first, or should I say study, the first 5 verses of the book of Job. We have talked about his family, his character, and his family. Our next study will concern, start with verse 6, talking about the controversy of Satan with God. The controversy of Satan with God, because as you know, all of a sudden God grants Satan permission to test Job. That begins in verse 6. Whatever is going on in your life, things may be going well, good. But as you know, the hymnologist said, time is filled with swift transition. And you will see that times will transition quickly in the life of Job. Unbeknownst to him, he's minding his own business. He's being the priest of his own home. But behind the clouds and behind the scenes, something else is happening. Just like you never know, something could be happening behind the clouds and the scenes of our lives. There's a reason for everything. We'll go into that in the next lesson. Be inspired, be blessed, be encouraged. Thanks for your time. Take care.